Holy cow. It's Halloween, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was Saturday night in Laramie. I thought that was what that was. Yeah. Yeah, no. Well, Rick, should we set some ground rules on no Wyoming questions in this press conference? Sure. You have seniority in here, I believe. Either you or Marty. No, go ahead. You want to start it off?
I couldn't find the quote. I looked for it, but I felt like you had said back in August that you felt like this is your most talented team, talented roster from top to bottom. Do you still feel that way?
I think that'd be hard to say right now. With the injuries that we've had, quite honestly. I think what it is at certain positions, I think that's still pretty accurate. I really do. I think our defense right now is probably the most talented defense we've had overall. I would stick with that statement. I think our kicker and punter are the best kicker and punter we've had since I've been here. I think with what has kind of not evolved on the offensive line and at tight end, I'd have a hard time saying that right now about that offensive line and that tight end position. Defensively, I would probably say that's still accurate. Kicking game, as far as punter and kicker, I would say. We've not developed on offense like we normally have each year, and we've kind of been in this scenario of young offensive line before, but as the season went on, a Chris Lewis got better, a Dylan Romine came in at the end of the year. You can go back and talk about some of those situations. This year, that really hasn't happened for a combination of reasons, some injury. So I hope that answered your question. I still think, with the addition of those two corners and some of the explosive guys we have on defense, I do think we're pretty talented. Now, we're not more talented than anybody in this league, but we're still talented enough in comparison to what we've been.
With the injuries on the offensive line and how you've had to plug guys in and out, what makes it so challenging, or chemistry-wise, getting used to the guy next to you? And it's not. What makes the difference with those guys when you got to sub them in and out?
Yeah, I think it's bigger than just this 1 year. We've kind of been chasing at that position for the last several years. I could go all the way back to Toye and the injury Toye had when he was a sophomore and looked like he'd be a three-year starter. Some other situations that we had. We've never caught up on the offensive line as far as overall depth. We end up playing young guys every year, which there's no excuse for that. This is our 6th year here. That's just how it's kind of happened here. And when you combine youth with moving positions, now it really becomes an issue. It's one thing if Chris Estrella comes in and starts as a really true sophomore. He came in here, had no spring football practice, and he stays at guard. You have a chance as that season goes on to develop. But when all of a sudden Chris Estrella has to go to tackle and then he gets injured, you lose all continuity. The same can be said for Teton. He comes over from defense. Okay, if he's going to stay healthy and play tackle all year, he's going to be developing as that season goes on. There we have 2 young guys to mix in with Avery, Blaze, and Aaron Jenkins. But it just hasn't worked out that way. It hasn't happened that way. And then what happens is, you try to tweak, you try to not change your identity, but change kind of the way you do things a little bit. And then all of a sudden you look up and it's, oh man, what are we? Who are we? And that's kind of what this has been. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year at that offensive line position.
Coach?
Marty?
Honest to God, in the bottom of my heart, I think you can win every ball game. I think you got an 80% chance of winning every game on the schedule. And I'm basing this on, if you let me explain, is my relationship.
I thought I was going to jump in there. I didn't. I used patience right there.
Okay. I know it's my relationship as a kid growing up with Darrell Royal and Bud Wilkinson. I remember Royal used to say there's 3 things when you pass the ball, 2 of them are bad. And then he used to say, you dance with who brung you. That's your running game. And Bud Wilkinson used to talk about if you can win the turnover margin in your favor. You'll win 73% of the game. And then the other thing that's going for you is if you could control the kicking game and field position, especially we've got the #2 kicker in the country, best place kicker. We can just not muff pumps. We can win 75% of the game. That was his percentage, Bud Wilkinson. And I believe you got that going for you.
Well, it's probably what we've been the last couple years, right? We have been a team that ran the ball. We have been a team that has minimized turnovers and mistakes. We have been pretty good in the kicking game. Now, all of a sudden, our kickoff return game, which has been really good for us, is non-existent. I can't argue with any of those points, and that's really how we've built this program. But at some point, probably the difference is if you're Bud Wilkinson at Oklahoma and you're at Texas, you probably can stick to that plan all year and have good enough players to do that. But each and every situation is a little bit different, and each team is a little bit different. So you try to tweak and you try to fix things. And sometimes you fix those things, and all of a sudden you do is create more problems. But I will say, you know, we threw the ball we had 5 interceptions up there. Everybody saw that. We do have to continue to throw the ball to a degree because it's not realistic right now to line up and say we're just going to come out there and run the ball on Utah State. Texas A&M, I think, is pretty good. You know, UNLV and San Diego State. So, you know, Marty, I get the point. That's really how we've built this program. It's just right now we're not really wired that way to maybe go win a game that way against a good team. But certainly when you try to do more and you try to tweak, you know, there's ramifications from that. And that's I think it's all valid points.
Coach, who's going to start at quarterback on this weekend?
My gut tells me Lamar. I just think there's a couple things that really stood out to me about Lamar. First, he doesn't start the game at Wyoming. I think the first series he was in there, the first 3rd down, we throw the screen. He sinks a little bit, 91 reads it, he intercepts it, runs it down to the 1-yard line. We're getting whipped. We're down 42-0 at halftime. And then you look up in the second half, and there's Lamar on 3rd downs a couple times, scrambling, running his butt off, trying to make a first down, competing. That shows me doesn't show me, reinforces again just how much heart he has and how much competitiveness he has. And that means something to me. You know, just like when I saw him do that in the second half of that game, I've been around a lot of guys that would have been pouting and hiding in that second half of that game. Quite honestly. Here's a 50-year senior quarterback that didn't start and threw an interception on his first play, basically. You know, so I look at all those things. I realize what a bleak situation that was at Wyoming, and I do appreciate, I understand they ran little different plays in the second half. I understand all that. But just to come out of that locker room and play in the second half and not give up 80 points and beat them 3-0 in the second half, that means something to me. And, you know, people can be cynical about that, and I appreciate that. I probably would be too if I was sitting out there and heard to say, well, we won the second half 3-0. That resonates with me. That resonates with me. And I think the only reason I bring that up is I see that in Lamar, too, at the end of that game to be doing what he's doing. You know, so I think it's Lamar. Both quarterbacks have to play. You know, I mean, Lamar's a 50-year senior. We have 4 games left, okay? Not that that's the biggest issue right now because we're trying to win every game. But there is a reality that we have to develop this young quarterback that we all see is pretty talented. Utah State's very similar. You know, they've had a great quarterback in Kent Myers, has played every game, a lot like Lamar. Now they're going with Jordan Love, who's a redshirt freshman. You know, that's what teams that are 4-5 and 3-5 and trying to win a game do. You know, you try to do what you have to do.
Tyrone Owens was preseason all-conference selection based on the expectations and what we saw from him last year. This year, numbers obviously haven't been as good. Is it him? Is it the offensive line?
Yeah, I think he started out different than he did a year ago. I think a piece of that was the foot injury. I really do. I do think expectations. You know, all of a sudden you kind of go from nowhere to gaining 1,000 yards, and now you're not the next guy. You are the guy. I do think that's a piece of it. You know, But I do think a bigger piece of it is just how we are on offense right now. You know, we've not been able to get in a rhythm. We've not really allowed those backs to get in a rhythm other than the Air Force game. And that's a problem, you know. And I talk to those guys every day about that. You know, for us to win, we have to get our backs in a rhythm because our backs are the ones that can truly go win a game for us in our style of offense. Just haven't been able to do that. So it's a combination of things. I do, and I said this a week or so ago, I do think he has to finish down the stretch because he is healthy now. But we have to be able to block people. You know, we're going into this game with 3 offensive tackles out: Teton, Castellanos, and Chris Estrella. I mean, that's tough. That's tough on Mountain West Conference programs now.
You talk about the way Everton played in this last game.
Yeah. It's kind of exciting. You know, I look at Evatoe, and he's an explosive, powerful linebacker. He's probably 245 pounds. And he played really well in the second half of that game. And then we have another, of course, Alex Hart's back, who I think Alex Hart's really good. And then we have City. I'll let you guys pronounce his last name. But City's twin brother starts for Utah State, inside linebacker. So these 2 guys are really, really good football players. And Eva and City are 2 powerful, explosive players. And they're both back, along with Alex Hart. But Eva is coming off the knee injury. We were able to redshirt Eva last year, which was very important coming from junior college. And he's in a position here to really, I think, continue to develop. And I think he's really a good football player, really good.
Coach, is it true, Duffy Doherty used to say only angry people win football games? Is that true?
Say it again.
Duffy Doherty used to say only angry people win football games.
I don't know. I mean, look, there's so many different personalities, right? I mean, Bill Belichick's a great coach. Nick Saban's a great coach. On the flip side of that, you can take some other personalities. It's whatever you are on a consistent basis, and then finding you some really good football players and having a great plan. I think just like leaders, just like anything, they come in a lot of different packages. But I will tell you a great story that George Perlis told me, who was a Duffy Doherty disciple, who was the head coach at Michigan State. Great story. In fact, I told Craig Bowl this story before the game up at Wyoming. Somehow we started talking about George Perlis, but I probably shouldn't tell that story right now. He told it to me before a game. I probably shouldn't go there. It's a pretty good story, though. Anybody else?
What do you expect out of Utah State this week?
They have made the full commitment to the true tempo spread offense. Their offensive coordinator came from Washington State, but he really had a background and more longevity at Missouri. So there's a little bit of Mike Leach in there with the big splits of the offensive linemen. They're not going to maximum protect much. They're more of spread you out, get the ball out very quickly. A lot of formations, a lot of formation into the boundary. More of a pass-first team, but like any of those teams, they can run the football because of the formations they're in and the coverages you end up playing. But they are a true tempo commitment to be true spread offense, and they're talented. They have 2 really tall, talented receivers. They have a redshirt freshman receiver who's smaller that's really fast. They have a tight end that, I'll tell you, really, really good, number 87, that has about 33 or 34 catches, who I think was injured last year. He's kind of burst on the scene. And their tight end plays out in space a lot. They flex him like a wide receiver. Their offensive line is new. They really have 5 new guys, basically. 2 transfers from Snow College, a transfer from Ellsworth Community College, and a transfer from BYU in there. So they're new on the offensive line, but schematically they get the ball out very quick. And with those big splits, there's some creases in there just naturally. Defensively, they've always been good on defense. They have been solid. They've always had strong, thick defensive alignment. They've always had that. A lot of scheme on defense. Will definitely pressure you on third downs. The thing that jumps out to me is their kicking game. Their kicking game. I think they've blocked 4 punts. They're number 1 in the country in block punts. I think the next week we play A&M. They're second in block punts. They block punts. They fake punts. They fake the field goal. They bounce onside kick. So they're pretty attacking style of special teams. That's the thing that jumps out at me. They've been a really good punt block team for a lot of years at Utah State. They have really been good at that year after year, and that's a concern.
Coach, when you got to the bye week, you guys were 3-2, and you talked about people look at the schedule, the wins and the losses. Hey, we're 3-2. Maybe what we kind of anticipated,
right.
Which I thought was kind of interesting for the coach to be talking about, wins and losses and how we look at the schedule and maybe how you do.
Right.
You need 3 wins to become bowl eligible. You talked about that a couple of weeks ago. That's the goal now. Division titles out of the mix, conference championships. That's fallen by the wayside. Right. Is this a must-win game because of A&M and San Diego State road games?
Absolutely. And, you could probably look back at Wyoming and say that. If you really get into the true looking at the schedule, I know in spite of Marty's statistics of our percentages on the road, going to A&M and going to San Diego State are, the percentages aren't as high nearly as Marty stated those percentages. So with 2 home games, everybody, that's in everybody's the back of their mind. Utah State comes down here, 4 and 5. They have us, Hawaii at home, and then I think they go to Air Force. I mean, even though nobody wants to admit that, everybody at some point looks at that schedule and says, okay, I think we got a chance on this one. We're the underdog. We're the favorite. We all do that. But honestly, right now, what's happened to us 2 of the last 3 weeks, Bob, at Fresno and at Wyoming, we're more in just how do we go play our very best in this game, and it really has narrowed the focus for us. I mean, when you're 3-2 in an open date, and you're coming off 2 straight wins, there's a little bit more of big picture. When you get your butt kicked like we did 2 of the last 3 weeks, there's more of forget that big picture. Can we just keep from turning the ball over? And that's, being as honest as I can be. That's how it is. It is a bit of a roller coaster for everybody, and confidence and momentum are such a big part of this. And I think you look at it through the eyes of, do we have confidence and momentum right now or don't we? And that's not a bad thing. Some of the best football you ever played is when you're backed in the corner, and that's all you think about. So I hope I answered that, but.
How much can you feel like can do X and O wise, and how much is just kids playing better?
That's the hard part, because that's always the great question. Do you do more because maybe you need to scheme more? Or do you do less because the guys that are playing haven't played as much? That's the balance there. That's the balance there. And that is the whole issue of that. How do you get them to play fast? Because if you don't play fast, you don't have a chance. But if you do the same thing over and over and over and over again, you might play fast, but you're not going to beat them. That's what all of us in this profession, particularly when they're shuffling and things aren't working, that's the balance. And we've been pretty good at always getting back to our identity. We've stayed in our identity. We were our identity at Wyoming. It's just we threw 5 interceptions in the first half, and all of a sudden now, same thing happened at Fresno. You get in there and you don't feel like you can run it real well. You need to be balanced, and all of a sudden you're behind. And now what do? Just go back and run it and say, okay, let's, or do you try to do some things and develop a young quarterback and throw it around and see if you can get back in the game? But it's a great question. That is the balance right there. All right, man.